Typical September weather settling in across the U.S. A little tropical storm down there in Baja California, and scattered air mass thunderstorms across much of the southeastern U.S. Checking out the surface analysis, this time of year we tend to be dominated by the Bermuda High. It does appear as high pressure, which becomes stronger as you get out towards the East Coast. However, the high that we have out there is polar in nature. You can see the dew points out there, 40s and 50s. That's a modifying polar air mass. It is sinking to the southeast and merging into the Bermuda High, which is well offshore. And I'll show that to you on the model data. This field of higher than usual pressure, 1018, 1016 millibars, that's the Bermuda High. It is being distorted partly by this hurricane well up to the north, a very strong polar air mass across the far northern Atlantic, and of course this migratory polar high coming out of the Northwest Territories. This is more what it would look like if we did not have those features up north. That's a forecast product, but anyway, that'll give you an idea what to look for on the charts in a more typical weather pattern. And there is more cold air on the way up there in central Canada. Temperatures in the 50s. Winnipeg around 68 degrees, and it gets cooler as you go north. And this afternoon up there in Hudson Bay, powerful thunderstorms. And let's get a look at things. Here's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Hudson Bay. Starting out, elevated storms out around the lakes of Manitoba. Those head on off to the east and they get into drier air. But take a look up there in northwestern Manitoba. These are some rather strong thunderstorms. You can see a heavy lightning cluster right there. I guess that'd be around Flin Flon. That's yesterday afternoon about 6 p.m., 5 or 6. And those head on off to the east through the overnight hours. Definitely retaining a lot of their strength and more developing off to the southwest. So that's going to be about 10 o'clock this morning. And those keep tracking to the east right there through James Bay. Definitely significant lightning activity. I would not be surprised if there were funnel clouds or weak tornadoes out there, but this is very unpopulated. This is mostly muskeg territory and just a few coastal towns right here in this area. What does that look like on Canada's radar network? Well, there's no radars up there. It's probably not economically feasible to put radars up there, so this points to the value of the lightning data that we get from the GOES GLM, the Geostationary Lightning Mapper. That's what we need to get that kind of thunderstorm information out over the oceans and in remote areas like northern Canada. And another way to see the storms is with the cameras at Nav Canada. I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but that's on the western coast of James Bay. Yeah, that's definitely a formidable looking sky. And look at that dew point. 16 degrees Celsius or 61 Fahrenheit. So we go further up the coast. This will probably be on the backside. And that looks like cold air advection type convection. You can see a few cells in there. Temperature 59 degrees, very windy west winds. And there are some of those showers there, but again, that's on the backside. So we're talking about this area here, the west wind sweeping in behind the convection. Anyway, we got a little bit off track. Let's head back to the southeastern U.S. Stationary front. Very weak temperature contrast. A few 90s down there on the Gulf Coast, down to 80s around Illinois and Missouri. Looking out in the western U.S., we're in the ramp-up phase to that heat wave coming up over the weekend, and early next week, temperatures are already up in the mid-90s out there in the Great Basin area. Down to the south, Tropical Storm Javier, 45-mile-an-hour winds heading to the northwest. We're looking for more development over the weekend into next week. That could affect the Gulf of California, but we'll have to check the models. So we'll do that in a little bit. Some cold air lurking offshore, but that's not going to help immediately. And up there in Alaska, continued very mild. Another powerful Gulf of Alaska system. And out there in Canada, still developing a lot of polar air. There comes another outbreak of that, 30s temperatures, but none of this appears to be snow. Sometimes the west coast of Mexico is very important in terms of tropical weather and its effect on the U.S. There's the current map, there's Javier, and here's a developing system there south of Acapulco. Normally these storms don't bother us, but when they get into the Gulf of California area and northwest Mexico, they can spread tremendous amounts of moisture inland. But right now, we don't have a clear indication of what's going to happen with this storm. So Javier we're not worried about. However, it is going to drive 3 to 5 foot swells into Southern California this weekend, into early next week. So here we are. There's this other developing tropical cyclone. The previous models from Wednesday had it coming right up like that into the Gulf of California. This one is going a little bit further westward. Now this is 144 hours out. This is almost a full week. So there's a lot of uncertainty with this track. So we're just going to have to continue watching that. And very likely by Monday, we should have a better idea what will happen with that. But as you can see, rapid dissipation, even as it approaches California with this scenario, you can see just before that, pretty deep circulation, and then it just disappears as it gets over that cold current. That really emphasizes the importance of the Gulf of California, very warm waters compared to the coastal areas west of Baja California and California itself. There's the graphics from NHC. We've got a low-end hurricane way out there in the Atlantic. That's not going to bother anybody. This is the storm we're watching. Should see that evolve into a tropical storm and possibly a hurricane by about Tuesday. A quick look at the deterministic GFS has a closed center there near the Leeward Islands, and going forward into early next week, there's Tuesday. You can see that storm taking root, but recurving very rapidly, and looks like a little Fujiwara effect around Thursday, but that's going to remain way out to sea. And at this time, it looks to be far enough offshore where it should not affect the northeast coast. In fact, I can see right there, migratory 1023 millibar high. That's indicative of a strong prevailing westerly pattern, and that should keep the storms from the coastal regions. And before I put my foot in my mouth, I better take a look at the ECMWF, the European model. There's that circulation there north of Dominica. The model just doesn't do very much with that, and in fact, it dissipates it by Friday. So this looks even less likely to bring any tropical activity into the East Coast region. However, out there in the southwest, there's that other system of concern heading up towards California, the European model bringing that right into Southern California. All right, the big moment, the forecast extremes. Let's take a look at that. This is the forecast for today. 110 being forecast at Fresno. That will be a record breaker, and also records being broken today from eastern Nevada up towards the Columbia River Basin. Excessive heat warnings in effect. We are expecting over 110 in some areas in California over the next few days. And Reno, they're expecting 100 degrees. They've only reached 100 degrees in September 8 times in recorded history, and that could happen today and tomorrow. And for Saturday, the heat continues. Death Valley expected to reach 123 today and 122 tomorrow, which would break the record for the day by 1 degree. Up to the north, Salt Lake City, 101, which is highly abnormal, and that breaks the record by 3 degrees, and numerous records all the way up into Montana. Saturday and Sunday, there is going to be a shortwave passing by to the north. We saw that on the Wednesday program. I kind of showed the upper level charts and showed that going by. You can see that in its wake, temperatures rebound back up towards 108 at Fresno, 103 at Ramona, 95 at Camarillo, and Salt Lake City, 101. There's Monday, more of the same. Palmdale, 112. Ukiah, 110. So the heat really settling in across central and southern California. And Grand Junction, 100. The heat just kind of spreading into different places. There's Tuesday, the heat continuing, 111 expected at Fresno, and lots of records for the date broken across the Great Basin area. Missoula, Montana, had its hottest August on record, exceeding the previous by 2 degrees. The heat continues for Wednesday, 109 at Fresno, but this could be the last day of significant record-breaking heat. And that's not just climatology bias, that's actual indicated information from the dynamical models. And you can see that Thursday, no records expected across the U.S. Now, I'm sure there's probably going to be a few somewhere, but at this time, this is a major change from what we had Wednesday. The southeastern U.S. looking like this afternoon. Numerous air mass thunderstorms, especially across Louisiana and Texas. Some more out there in the northern portions of Florida, central Florida, and eastern Georgia. A lot of debris cloud, a lot of this cirrus here. That's the remnants of old convection. Big Rig Steve, he's my go-to source for weather on the road. Great views of the sky. He's located up here, heading towards Atlanta to make his delivery. I had to back this up about 5 minutes because he's in an area with weak signal. But there in the sky, you can see a lot of convective debris, very dense cirrus. Base is probably about 20,000 feet, a little bit of altocumulus in there. So very likely he's in a somewhat overturned dry air mass, not much recovery with those convective conditions. And he's probably going to have a pretty good drive as he heads southbound. And some very stormy conditions in Florida. That's a better look at those storms. The most active storms in the western part of the state. And it's noteworthy, this is the 87th anniversary of the Labor Day hurricane of 1935, highly destructive Category 5 storm. There it is. You can read more about it on Wikipedia. Central pressure of 892 millibars, storm surge up to 20 feet, and sustained winds 185 miles an hour. It's believed to be the strongest hurricane to ever make landfall in recorded history in the U.S. Fair skies in the northeastern U.S. and downright clear in Boston, Maine, and Albany. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania had its second warmest August on record with 78.8 degrees and their 8th driest August, but just to the south. Charleston, West Virginia, located about right here, had their rainiest summer on record, 24.43 inches from June 1st to August 31st, and they're also in first place for the rainiest year in terms of year-to-date precipitation, 47.25 inches. A stormy weather pattern continues across Texas up into the Ozarks. Not really much to say about these, but the anvils are spreading off to the east, so this area is under the influence of prevailing westerlies. The southwestern U.S. still showing that northeasterly flow. That tends to be dry and that shuts down the monsoon. However, there are still storms going up along the Mogollon Rim, the higher elevations in the Four Corners area, and the southern Rockies, but nothing in the deserts. You have to go south of Nogales and south of Douglas to find thunderstorm activity. Let's assess the damage at this hour, 2220Z. Gentlemanly heat there in Tucson and Phoenix, 100 and 107. But as you go further out to the west, the desert's quite hot, 110 at Daggett, 106 at Bakersfield, and 107 at Fresno. And as we can see up to the north, Reno has reached 100, also finding lots of mid to upper 100s in the area north of Sacramento, 107 there, north of Beale Air Force Base, 105 at Redding. And you can definitely make out the location of that upper level high. Northerly flow in Colorado, easterly flow in Arizona, and southerly flow in Nevada. So that outlines the location of the upper level high. And you can see smoke out there in the Bitterroot Range out towards the coastal range. Yeah, that's going to be around Mount Hood, maybe a little bit further south. And going forward into the next week, there's that short wave approaching the northwest coast, but too far north to really help much with this heat wave. And there's the high building right back in. So it's going to be a few days of very hot weather across the western U.S., but we're not seeing the 600 decameter readings that we had back in June of 2021. And the north central U.S., front pushing to the south, cooler, drier air on the way. However, it's still in the 90s in southern South Dakota. The front triggering some storms in the UP of Michigan and down to Minneapolis. And out on the Central Plains, a few storms going up, elevated with inverted V soundings. Some gusty outflow winds are possible, but not looking for any hail or tornadoes. There's a quick look at that activity. Storms crossing into Kansas, heading towards Oakley and Waukegan. Storms a little bit higher based as you get out towards Lyman. But everything looks outflowish. And you can see a little outflow boundary right there. And we'll go ahead and wrap things up since we're 17 minutes in. We've been using the precipitable water chart, but I'm going to go ahead and do the conventional sea level pressure and thickness. So let's look at the next week. Series of cold fronts working into the Great Lakes area. Doesn't look like they push very far south. A few boundaries maybe into the Midwest. Overall pretty quiet. The Gulf Coast active, however. There it is. Lots of moisture, lots of thunderstorm activity through the weekend. And let's see. The next big change is probably later next week. Well, there's that hurricane heading right up into Baja California, and another outbreak of cold air heading south. That's going to be about the 10th. We are getting pretty far out there as far as forecast accuracy, but looks like cool weather for the northeast and very persistent southerly flow through the central U.S. that will continue to bring up the moisture and keep the precip chances up for at least a week or two. And that's about all that I'm seeing, really. This is 300 hours out, so we're not going to worry about that. Looks like kind of a stagnant weather pattern, very typical for September. And that will do it for your Friday edition. I'm going to leave you with some footage taken by Greg, cotton fields west of San Antonio. So enjoy. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday for the supporters and Wednesday for everybody else. Have a good one. Bye-bye.